Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's practice group. With that, I do want to hand it over to our regular co-chairs, David Stutzman and Louis Metcalf, as well as I'm sure they'll probably want to welcome in our guest speaker today, Mike Davis. So David, Louis, and Mike, over to you to get started with today's session.
Thanks very much, Matt. This is Dave, Dave Stutzman. I'm coming to you from North Jersey, remote again, so I'm torturing Louis today, making him drive the ship today. And Louis, you want to do the honors of introducing Mike.
Okay. Well, and for some of we have a lot of newcomers today, and we're thrilled to have so many people. David, I think we might have touched a nerve with this subject matter because we have a record crowd today, and we're very happy to have everyone, especially our new folks. As David is usually on the East Coast, and unless he's traveling, doing his road warrior thing and being on the West Coast. I'm coming to you from sunny and beautiful downtown Nashville, Tennessee, and from Chattanooga is a former president of the Institute and a general contractor, Mr. Mike Davis.
Hello.
Hello, Mike, and welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Mike, are you ready to give this presentation today?
I'm a great follow guy.
Okay. Well, let me do a little bit of an introduction. The idea for today's presentation really came because I'm involved in a court case that has me as one of the expert witnesses, and in preparing a report in response to another expert, a specifier for the opposing party, I was concerned because I was seeing an attitude towards substitutions that actually surprised me. So as a result of what I was
bad attitude about substitutions, horror.
Well, not a bad attitude, just a different attitude, one that I just didn't expect. So as part of what I was doing to help support our case, I actually polled our clients to see if they had the same attitude, see if maybe I was missing the boat here somewhere. And as a result of that poll, I have the results to share with you today, and then we have a couple of poll questions for you as our audience to see what your attitude is towards some of these things as well. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion, and we certainly welcome your comments as we go through, because this is really about trying to find out what really is going on in the industry as to how substitutions are being approached and what the attitudes are. So, Louis, where in the world did you find this photo?
Oh, I have my sources. That of course is Hamlet and the two guards being confronted by Hamlet's dad up there on the tower.
It does look like the specter. So today we really want to talk about substitutions and see if we can all come to some sort of an equal understanding as to what we should be doing with them, how we should be approaching them, how maybe we should be restricting them, and whether or not we should even be considering them at all. Go ahead, Louis, since you're driving this bus.
Okay. Well, of course, we need to start with what is a substitution? And one of the interesting challenges to a specifier is that if you specify 3 brands of an oscillating surge convector, the contractor or the subcontractor is invariably going to want to use brand number 4. And if you specify 4 brands, that entity will want to use brand number 5. So a substitution is a change in a product that was specified. And usually it's a brand change rather than a complete change of type as such, although sometimes there may be some minor variations, changing liquid applied waterproofing to sheet applied waterproofing, but it's still waterproofing. And so it's what's in the contract document. And we're going to talk a little later about the substitutions before the contract sign and those as opposed to those afterwards. But the ones, in particular, the substitution requests that come in after the contract signed fall into two categories, for cause and for convenience. And if I specify something that is no longer made, that's a substitution for cause, and I really don't have much choice other than to consider it. But there may be other conditions that are changed, or regulatory regulations that have changed, or there may even be issues with the manufacturer being able to keep up sufficient production to provide the product in time. Substitutions for convenience, as you can see here, are four categories where they are sometimes we want the subcontractor that the GC likes to work with may have a particular relationship with one supplier or one manufacturer and get a better cost from them than buying it from a stranger, for somebody they haven't done a lot of work with. It may also have to do with schedule, in terms of if I was surprised on a project a few years ago that the contractor asked me if I would specify a more expensive brand of waterproofing than the one I had specified, because he could close up his foundation excavations that much faster, and time was money to him, and so he didn't mind spending a little extra money on the product to be able to get into the project later. So Mike, you want to chime in on this a little bit about convenience and cause substitutions?
Yeah, I mean, time is money, and if you can pick up schedule time, you're talking big dollars. And I've done the same thing where I would spend the money up front. But I guess the frustrating thing is when you get substitutions simply because the supplier is not authorized to provide the specified product, and you didn't know that till he submitted something that you can't get approved.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm not sure that at my end I've run into that situation. Mike, can you give us an example?
Well, I just recently working on a project that had a hollow metal doors. The supplier had to be either Republic or Amweld. I believe Amweld has been out of business for about 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. But the supplier sent Steelcraft doors to the job site. And the problem, there was no shop drawing checking prior to this. It was submit what's specified. Well, the construction manager for the owner shows up on the job and sees the doors sitting on the loading dock, packaged up. They've just been unloaded from the truck, and he says they're not the right doors. So then we get in a jerk trying to find what the problem is, and when I'm talking to my supplier, I'm telling him they have to be Republic doors, and he had sent a Steelcraft door. The response from the supplier is, well, I'm not authorized to sell Republic products. I don't have a deal with them. Steelcraft is just as good. I understand that, but we didn't meet the intention of the specifications that we had. So we had to go all through the process. At that time, we got the Steelcraft approved as an equal, but quite frankly, the specs didn't read equal. They read Republic or Amweld. So that's what should have been supplied.
Well, it also, one of the lessons from that experience is it really pays to do the paperwork. And so when the paperwork that the architects write, whether it's during the bidding procedure or after the bidding procedure, can save everybody a lot of time and grief if we'll just do it. And
I totally agree, and we learned a lesson here. This was for a tenant, a retail tenant, and the retail did not want to do shop drawings. They said, we've specified it. Our side of the table, we should have asked our supplier to submit shop drawings, and we would have checked them here to make sure it was the right material. So I'm putting as much on us as I did on him. He just should have been a little bit more square with me up front in the process and told me it wasn't a Republic product.
Right. But in this case, Mike, you were relying on their assurance that they did plans and specs, correct?
That's what his quote told me, and that's what
and only found out later. Yeah.
Yeah. But it still cost me time and money.
And of course, there's the issue of equivalent products. Some folks prefer the term comparable or equivalent to equal, because no two products are ever exactly equal. But
right.
When we have public bidding in particular, or when we want to get the most competition and hence the best price for our clients, we often may list several manufacturers and then say or comparable or equivalent product. Kevin O'Byrne says an or equal is an item that is equivalent to what is specified. A substitution is an item that is not the equivalent to what is specified. Substitutes or substitutions may have potential to affect the AE's design and may have cost effects. And that's very true, and we'll be talking more about that, is that we do have to carefully evaluate those.
But it shouldn't be the product supplier making that decision.
Right.
And I would say too, Lewis, in this case, if we have a list of manufacturers or if we have a list of products, if there is not, or if the contractor does wish to submit something else, especially in public bidding, then it would be treated as a substitution because it's not a specified item.
Yes. And Wayne Yancey reminds us that contractors, and I think Mike he means in general, not necessarily you, would rather ask for...
I'm willing to take that heat.
Or would rather ask for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Sometimes that permission costs a lot of money, but sometimes so does forgiveness.
That's right. And one of the reasons we wanted to invite you is that we want our audience to understand that there are times when the general contractor is caught in the crossfire, like in that very case that you explained, that one of your subs basically wasn't upfront with you, didn't tell the truth, and so now all of a sudden you're caught in the middle, and it's costing you money as well as the architect to look at the alternative product.
So he had the audacity to send me a change request for the $12,000 just to apply the right doors.
Okay.
I suppose you told him it would be okay?
In English.
Yes, or especially
Old English.
As Anglo-Saxon, yes, all those power words. Well, where do substitutions come from? Obviously, we have people wanting opportunities to bid. I used to have this wonderful sales rep product rep up in Cincinnati who represented USG acoustical ceilings, and whenever my ID team would release a spec that was a closed spec for Armstrong, he would come in and say, Lewis, my product that has better sound absorption and it's got better STC ratings and all this, and go through the stuff. And I said, yeah, but it don't look the same. I'm sorry. So it behooves us sometimes to explain why we are picking things. And it may not be performance. It may be just appearance. And that comes from having a good relationship and an ongoing relationship through CSI, hint, 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 with the product reps in your area so that they understand where you're coming from. And of course, again, we spoke earlier about subcontractors who may be able to get a better price on from one manufacturer than they do from another one, and want to be able to use what they consider to be an equivalent product. And then there are the scheduling issues. And another result is we have to say that take some responsibility in the AE side is poor product research. Not only specifying products that are no longer made, but we may not look far enough. If we're really serious about trying to get competitive pricing for our owners, and I think competition also drives excellence, because when manufacturers have to compete against one another, that's what drives them to create new methods and new products. But if we're...
Louis, just as an example of that, I had a pool consultant just this week suggest to the architect that they include an exterior air barrier material as an interior waterproofing material surrounding the pool that would be left exposed to the interior of the building. Now, I don't know too many exterior air barriers that are tested as an interior finish material. I don't know that I would trust them as a waterproofing material.
No, they're not. They're intended to be water shedding, not withstand a head of water as such.
Right.
So, but anyway, it behooves us to make sure that we have a representative group of manufacturers, and if we don't care who makes it, don't specify it. I don't specify the manufacturers of screws, and there are a lot of commodity items, even steel deck. Do we really care who makes the steel deck, so long as it meets the Steel Deck Institute specifications? And unclear specifications can also elicit more substitutions than any of us would like. I need to get caught up with a couple of questions and comments, David. Let's see.
Yeah, I think the one from Steve Gross would be one worthwhile.
Okay, well, why don't you read that to the folks?
Well, I would, accept that.
You're right.
I think I've got it.
I'll do it. Go
ahead.
I would challenge the definition put forth at the beginning of the session on what constitutes a substitution. Unless the specifications are closed proprietary, a change in manufacture does not constitute a substitution so long as all the prescriptive and performance requirements of the specification are met. For example, using Steelcraft instead of Republic doors. These are comparable products and can be handled through the standard submittal process. A substitution would be a change in product process or design intent, proposing a fiberglass door instead of a specified hollow metal. This would be a substitution and follow the more formalized substitution process. I believe this is the distinction that Kevin O'Barron is getting at. It is the differentiation that MasterSpec makes and really does simplify the process. Well, yes and well, no. The problem...
Let me take this one.
Okay, all right.
Steve, and you're right in that MasterSpec treats it as a comparable product, or allows you to treat it as a comparable product. And as far as I know, MasterSpec is the only one that has that kind of a concept built into Division 1. But because it's there does not necessarily mean that everyone is using comparable product to establish that equivalency. And actually, MasterSpec gives you the option of defining it as a comparable product or as a substitution. It really is the designer's option.
But the other thing that we have to keep in mind is, on a substitution, is it's a change in contract documents. And once the contract for construction has been signed and executed between the owner and the contractor, I, as a third party, even though I wrote part of the contract documents, do not have the unilateral legal right to change them after the fact, because it's not a contract. I'm not a party to that contract. And so technically, in the A201, all substitutions, any change, whether it's change in manufacturer or an actual change in product type, have to be executed by a change order. Now, a lot of owners don't want to fool around with that if it's a no-cost change, and so I sometimes advise owners to allow us to put in a supplementary condition that says that if it's a no-cost change in the products, that the architect can approve them by ASI, Architect
Right.
Supplemental Instruction. But normally, they do have to go through a change order, because I can't change a contract between the owner and the contractor without their agreement. And so that, to me, is the most critical definition of a substitution, is it's a change from what the original contract document said.
Right, and master spec, that is in part why they introduced comparable products, to avoid the need to go to change order to accept a product that was considered comparable, instead of triggering the substitution process.
Right, which is to everybody's advantage.
Right. So I have another question or comment from Tom Brose.
Oh, yes, okay.
Saying, says, please note I submit substitution requests because one or more of the products listed in the specs don't have distribution in my area, where the manufacturer limits distribution to one distributor to keep the price up, thus effectively excluding the other distributors.
Yes, and of course that happens, especially when we're using master specification systems like master spec. It may, in fact, there are some manufacturers in there that only distribute on the West Coast and not in Central Tennessee. So they may or may not be available. All right.
Okay.
Are we pretty well caught up with our audience here? Okay.
Yeah, there are a couple more, but we're pretty much caught up.
Okay. Kevin O'Meara asked, under an AE's professional services agreement and the standard of care, how many alternative products need to be evaluated? Well, of course, typically on public works, they like to see at least 3 different manufacturers listed. But it's a judgment call. Like I say, if I specify 3 brands, the subcontractor's going to want to use brand number 4. It just happens all the time.
Except Lewis, I think he's asking in context of substitutions.
Oh, and we're going to talk about that. That how many? Let's go on to the next slide then.
Okay, so here is part of the poll that I put out to my clients. Now, the poll went out to about 1,000 individuals, and I got back 59 responses. So go ahead, Lois. You want to show the first? Okay, so the question, how likely are you to approve a substitution request when it does not include a change to the contract price or time? Actually, I was surprised at the response that you take sometimes, often, and always, and that's quite a large percentage that would consider substitutions even without a change in price or time.
David, if you're listening very closely, you can hear all the product reps cheering in the background.
I thought I heard that roar outside my door. Okay, so you want to show the next one? Okay, so on average, approximately what percentage of proposed substitutions would be approved? And again, I was surprised. So that if you look at the 25% or greater, I think that's a good number of substitution approvals on average over the projects. Now, one of the things that surprised me was in this case I'm involved in, the other expert was claiming that the likelihood of substitutions being approved is very remote, and that the number of substitutions that would be reviewed by the architect are also very limited. So, and I think the reaction from my clients, and I'll qualify them, they're my clients, actually says something entirely different. So if you have comments on this, I would love to hear them. So feel free to add them to the chat box.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and do our 2 poll questions.
Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
Matt, would you get those up? First, of course, we're talking about whether it's comparatively, how many projects do we do anymore that are competitively bid as opposed to negotiated or other form of securing the contract. And so if you would give us a little bit of an answer there, we'd like to see what our group experience is.
Okay, we only have about, a very small percentage that have actually cast their vote yet, so get your voices heard. Meanwhile, Mike, what was your reaction to those last 2 slides? What's your impression of how often substitutions are actually approved?
I don't see that many myself. I mean, that one number was close to 70%, I believe, that was approved.
Yes.
And you're seeing the approval frequency much lower?
Yes. Yes. Because a lot of people think they have an equal or comparable product, and they really don't. That meets the intention of the design team. Okay. But I think those people that are getting that many approved, they're out doing what they're supposed to be doing, selling their product.
Okay. So, Matt, you want to go ahead and show the results of the poll?
Well, that's a little surprising to me because in my practice, both of my present firm, where I've been for almost 8 years, and in my previous firm, by the overwhelming majority of projects were negotiated projects, and we only did 1 or 2 competitively bid projects a year, and sometimes less than that. So I'm surprised that so many are, but maybe we've got a lot of folks that are doing a lot of government work where that's required.
That could very well be.
We do.
Well, I think Louis, I think you're seeing too that the market is just now, in my area, really starting to change to get back into favor of the contractors, not the owners, as far as the bid process. I mean, there for a while, a lot of jobs that were previously negotiated went out for bid because the owner was trying to get the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, but the kind of the balancing truth on that, Mike, is that so many clients are in such a hurry to get the projects done that they would rather work with a CM who can give them a GMP when the drawings are in the DD at the end of DD phase, and then that they don't want to wait for and then issue drawings in multiple work packages for fast track construction, because they don't want to wait until the architect takes a year to finish drawings and completely and be able to put them out on the street for competitive bidding.
I understand. We just had a $28 million school bid in my area last week. They gave the architect 8 months to design it, and they're giving the contractor 13 months to build it. That's pretty aggressive.
Yeah,
and how long to bid it, Mike?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
you show the second poll while we're just chatting here a bit? And Louis, maybe we want to catch up on some of the comments as well.
Yeah. Let's see. Mary Noe says competitively bid because mostly government work. Thomas Brewer says, I'm an estimator for a leading rolling door company, and all of my work is competitively bid due to competition, only a few budget numbers these days. And of course, Thomas there is talking about sub-bidding for subcontracts rather than the general construction contract, but that doesn't surprise me. In the area I work in, says Munir Kronful, the Middle East, we mostly resort to comparable products and typically allow substitutions provided they do meet performance and design requirements. Mainly, the biggest reason for this approach is to avoid accusations from the client to us, that is designer and spec writer, of being biased. Sheldon talks about the poll, says the poll results probably explain why we have heated discussions about various things. What may be a huge problem for design bid build projects may not be a big deal for projects where the contractor is involved during design phase. And that's certainly very true, Sheldon.
Okay. Hey, Matt, you want to show the results now for the second poll?
And we picked these 5 partly because we can only have 5 alternatives on these polls, but figuring that we don't get a lot of substitutions in divisions 3, 4, 12, 13, and 14. So, and sure enough,
we also don't have as many spec sections in those divisions either.
No, that's absolutely true. So, just to kind of give people an idea of where most of them are coming from. Very few in Division 10 and 11. It's the main ones of keeping out the wind and rain in Division 7, and windows and doors in 8, and all those wonderful finishes that our ID folks come up with.
Yeah, it's not surprising Division 9 leads the way here, even though it's not by a huge margin. But it's there that you end up with an awful lot of the aesthetic concerns with the finishes.
Leanne Rantala has an interesting question. She says, doesn't a substitution for convenience that occurs after the contract is signed that does not affect the price or schedule put the owner at risk for a lawsuit, as other contractors did not have the opportunity to bid the same substitution? And yes and no. Public bid projects, one does have to be very careful to follow the rules and make sure that that the playing field is perfectly level, that no advantage is given to someone else. That is always a possibility, but I think it's still fairly rare. But in particular, I did have an issue when I was practicing up in Cincinnati, and we were doing a very, very large project, and my mechanical engineer consultant, bless his heart, had written a closed spec for the controls for a very large and complex system. And so we were talking about well over $1 million worth of just controls. And it was written in such a way that nobody else could compete. And my boss sent me to the pre-bid conference as the sacrificial lamb, because we had been informed that these guys were bringing their lawyers with them. And so when the question was raised, I stood up and said, "You're absolutely right, that's wrong, we will fix it." And managed to avert that catastrophe. But that was pretty dramatic, because you could see the guys out in the audience. They were just absolutely fuming. And our mechanical engineer at first got up and started to kind of talk around it a little bit, and I got up and interrupted him and said, "Nope, we're going to fix that." Anyway.
Okay. So, Matt, can we go back to the presentation?
Well, there's a couple of more comments here that I think might be of some interest. Richard Perkins says, I actually received more substitutions in Division 16 or 26, especially for light fixtures, wiring conduit, and wiring devices.
I would say light fixtures is one of the classic examples because you end up with a distributor that wants to supply an entire package, and they never have all the fixtures that the architect or the engineer has selected.
Yes, and there again we get into the difference between the unique decorative fixtures versus the commodity troughers. That can be a problem. Keith Robinson says if we were allowed to check more than one, I think 7, 8, and 9, Division 7, 8, and 9 would be seen as one massive request. Add them up, and 95% is probably pretty close to the amount of substitution requests processing time for just these components. Okay.
Right.
I'll give you the next page.
Okay. All right. This next group, actually, I was trying to ask why they might consider substitutions because, and I was surprised at the attitudes towards approval. So the first one, when a manufacturer's not named, are you likely to approve an unnamed manufacturer? And I think if you look at it, it looks like the majority is, probably less than real positive about unnamed manufacturers. So you want to show the next one, Lewis? But if it's an unnamed product, the attitude changes dramatically. So if a contractor would come in with a product that was not named in the spec as a substitution request, the likelihood of approval is much greater. Okay, and the last one, for basis of design products, is very similar to unnamed products. So I was a bit surprised in this shift in attitude, that if we have manufacturers named, at least my clients are less likely to approve a substitution from an unnamed manufacturer. What's been your experience on that, Mike?
No, I agree with what I'm seeing from your clients right there. If it's an unnamed manufacturer, somebody you're probably not that comfortable with to start with. So I can see that, but the product thing is totally unnamed products is totally where I think it would be based on my experience because there's just so many different products out there. But this one doesn't surprise me as much as the first ones.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, then maybe it's a good reflection of where the industry is. Okay, you want to move on then, Lewis?
Okay. We have a comment in from Kevin O'Byrne again. Oddball situation, but I've seen it happen. He says a substitution request that involves some considerable redesign by a design professional hired by the contractor. In that case, who owns the design liability, the AE or the contractor's design professional? Well, Kevin, just this past week I went to a breakfast seminar, one of the legal firms in town that does a lot of construction law work and is our attorney. As a matter of fact, my firm's attorney was talking about that if the owner wants to file a claim against an AE for defective design, one of the first things that they have to prove is, was it built according to the plans and specs? And if it wasn't, if there was a substitution that may have been agreed upon between the owner and the contractor, that happens a lot on developer jobs, where the architect is not a party to that, then it's not the AE's liability, although it may cost some court time to prove that. But that is a basic principle in law. Dave, we need to pick up the pace a little bit here.
Okay. So then we wanted to look at how substitutions are processed. This other expert was claiming that because the time involved in processing substitutions was so significant, that the attitude was that it would be too time restrictive to be able to look at substitution requests during the bidding process. So again, went out to our clients and discovered if you take the answers that say that they're processing substitutions during bidding and after bidding, it's the majority, the vast majority. So they're either allowing substitutions both before and after bidding, or they're processing substitutions during bidding. So go ahead and show the next, the text that goes along with this list. Okay,
of course, the big advantage of looking at substitutions during the bidding period is that the product decisions and everything are fresh in everybody's mind. Whereas if a product substitution request comes in 6 months or a year later during the construction period, the person who picked that product may not even be employed in the firm anymore, and we've got to scramble, and it'll take more time to evaluate. But of course, during the bidding period, the approval can be done by addendum, that is unilaterally by the design professional. It does not require a change order.
Right, and you don't know what the cost advantage or the time advantage may be.
Exactly. Yeah. We're hoping that it may or may not give one of the bidders a better shot at the contract.
Yeah, and so after award a contract, it's all governed by the conditions in Division 1, whatever procedures you might set up there. And as Lewis explained earlier, the acceptance method is always a change order because it becomes a contract change.
Now, one thing that Steve points out, Steve Groth, he says, I generally try to prohibit substitutions during the bidding process because there can be an unlimited number that we would have to evaluate with no additional compensation and with no assurance that any bidder even intends to consider the product in its bid. After contract award, we at least know that there's a real intent to incorporate the proposed substitution. And that's absolutely right, Steve. And one of the things that I always put in my bidding requirements when I was writing them is a limitation that all proposed substitution proposals have to come from the general contractor, that we would not accept them from manufacturers' reps or even from subcontractors.
Yeah, and that was in an attempt to make sure that the contractor was actually interested in including them, correct?
Yes, exactly. And Mike, you want to comment on that?
Well, Lewis, was that during the bid period also, that it had to come through the GC?
Only during the bid period.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, obviously afterwards it has to also, but
right.
to hold down, because we've got some product reps that they might not have been able to sell their product to the subcontractor, but they want to sell it to me.
Yeah, no, I understand, and during the bidding process, I like that, because if it's a product manufacturer that's interested in getting his product approved and he's done the work to get the submittal information to you, I don't mind making that submittal for him, because I think I'm going to get an edge in pricing maybe. But a lot of times you have a product manufacturer that wants the GC to do the work to get it approved. And during the bidding period, I don't have the time to do that. That's where the product rep needs to know his product and needs to know what he needs to do to get his product approved in the right process. And it's amazing how many people don't know how to do that. And very frustrating.
So we've talked about some of the controls that are available.
Right, and these are all set, all controlled by the design team, yes?
Yes.
In the instructions to bidders or in Division 1, so you do have control over what happens as far as substitutions. All you have to do is make sure you're enforcing it.
And if it's a publicly bid project, you do need to allow enough time, but you can cut off the date that after such a date, maybe 1 week or 10 days before the bid date, that you're not going to look at any more substitutions.
Right. And the only one in here in the list, the value limitations, that one can only be used after award of contract. Every one of the others can be used either before or during bidding or after award. And one of the ones that I like to include is the last one, where you give the contractor one chance, so that you only are, he supposedly will pick his best chance of getting the product substitution approved, and if you don't accept it, furnish one of the ones that are specified.
Yes, because it is unreasonable to expect. I mean, we all figure into our fees that we're going to have to look at a certain level of substitutions, but it can get excessive. Casey Johnson asks, as a product manufacturer, how do you protect yourself from substitution by your competitor? Well, Casey, competitive pricing, superior service, and being timely and good relationships established through CSI, I think those will probably give you what you need. But we do appreciate that is an issue that, one manufacturer may spend a lot of time with us. A curtain wall guy may give us a bunch of details and so forth, and then we list 3 of his competitors, and goodness knows one of the other guys gets the job. And I feel your pain, I feel your frustration, but that's the nature of the business. Okay, we're ready for the next one?
Sure. Yep.
And this brings us right up.
This one really surprised me in this from the other expert. The other expert is saying that the architect can selectively review substitution requests, that he can weed out whichever request that he chooses, because on any one project he may specify 2,000 products. And on any one project, he might receive 2 to 3 substitution requests for every specified product. What I discovered from my own clients is that claim seems to be ridiculous, and I can't say that I've ever seen a project ending up with 6,000 substitution requests. But he's saying that because of that number of potential requests, the AE can selectively choose which ones to review. My attitude on this is the architect actually has a responsibility to the owner. If you're going to allow substitutions, you better be prepared to review them, because it's the owner that you're denying the advantage to if you selectively choose not to review the requests. What do you think, Louis?
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly that once you set up the rules, you have to play by them as well as the contractor. And that's just the nature of the beast.
Mike, have you ever had an experience where architects have simply refused to accept even the request?
Yes. Yes, even part of it is when they're enforcing their own controls, like you talked about previously. But I have encountered a few architects that bid it like it is. We don't want to consider anything. But I was a... Go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you find that happens even if they have substitution procedures specified?
Yes, surprisingly, because I've brought that very point up. I try to reference them back to where the procedure that they set up in their specifications on how to do that. And I've had 1 or 2, not that many, but there's a few that just stubborn enough not to look at it. But I think you were exactly right in your comment. I think you have an obligation to the owner.
Yes, it's because it's probably in the owner-architect agreement for our services.
Well, and it's the owner's money that you're spending.
Yeah. We need to move on, David.
Oh, sure. But this has been fun.
It is
We've
indeed.
gotten an awful lot of really good questions.
Yeah. One I want to read Taylor Coley comments as a product rep. It's part of my job to give the specifier enough information or ammo to help hold the spec, and that's absolutely true. And couldn't have said that better myself. And I have nothing but admiration for the product reps whom I depend upon for good information, being able to give me that information so that I can say, no, those are not really equivalent, and here's why. I'm struggling right now with, we have a substitution on a curtain wall system that I am not comfortable with at all, but and that's a problem. So you're absolutely right, Taylor.
So this one, poll question, how many substitution requests do you actually receive on a project? Again, from the other expert, I was surprised by the response. I actually expected to see that there was a higher number of substitutions that our clients were receiving, but the vast majority are fewer than 10. So, Mike, what would you say? Is this a reasonable reflection of what you see?
That surprises me, because I would have thought it would have been in the 25 to 30 range at a minimum. That pretty well surprises me. It's almost like the 10 or fewer and the 11 to 25 could almost flip, in my experience. I see more than that.
Maybe it's just the wonderful specs we produce. What do you think?
I would like to bid one of your projects.
This one surprised me as well. I didn't think it would be that few. But if that's the case, then I'm not sure why there would be any difficulty processing substitution requests, whether it's during bidding or after award, because this is that huge of a number to be looking at.
No, that's, yeah.
I just feel sorry for the one person that's processing more than 50.
Well, even the 26 to 50 gets a bit on the onerous side. And Steve Groff points out that the proposals need to be really complete, and that if they're incomplete, and expect the design professional to go rooting around on the internet or looking through catalogs to try to determine whether it's equal or not, comparable or not, that's not going to happen. Those kinds of substitution requests are going to get rejected out of hand. That the burden of proof is on the proposer. Sheldon says we don't get very many prior approval requests. The problem is that many of them come in just 2 days before the bid opening. Can I hear an amen on that?
You don't need to look at them.
Right, because they've passed the bid date. And you want to say something about that, Mike?
No, and I understand that. It's people waiting till the last minute. Normally, I think here we use 7 to 10 days.
Yes.
Is the cutoff time.
Yes.
And that gives ample time for everybody all the general contractors that are bidding the job to pick up the changes, for somebody to know that their product has been approved, where they can go out and push it to the bidding contractors. And but I agree. I see a lot of them that I understand they come in way too late to be considered. And I totally understand why it's put off.
Yeah, and in public bidding, you're really hampered, because many times they set the time limit for the last addendum to offer or to be able to accept the substitutions. And here in New Jersey, I know that's 7 business days before bids are due.
We kind of use 72 hours in this area, 3 days. is the last addendum prior to a bid.
But David is right that some government agencies may have even a longer period than that, and so that behooves everyone to be up front. Richard Perkins has a good comment. He says, our experience has been that quality design coupled with more than adequate detailing and specification results in a limited number of substitution requests. Good documents are essential. And that's absolutely right. The tighter the documents,
I love that
the tighter
attitude.
the bid. Okay.
Lewis, we're not going to make it through everything, are we?
No, we're right at the end. Well,
Pick your slide. Which one do you want to finish with?
We can go. I mean, this one is pretty self-explanatory, is that there are different stakeholders, and as we've observed and as Mike has told us, that sometimes the contractor, architects, engineers tend to blame the GC, but really sometimes the contractor is caught in between his sub and the crossfire with the AE, with the design team. But ultimately we're all out to make a buck, and we want to get the owner the best value for the product. But we have differing needs and goals, and so what we try to do is set up our documents, the rules of the game, to be as fair as possible. So, well, we are just thrilled to have so many more people today with us, a bunch of new folks, and we hope that you will consider to join us next month. And David and I, especially for those of you who are new and have not heard this before, we do not have an editorial calendar for the year, and we often react to things very quickly in terms of setting up these sessions. So if you have a question or an issue that you think would be informative for this group to discuss, please send in your cards and letters and let us know what you'd like for us to talk about with you. And we appreciate all the people that sent in comments and questions. We were not able to read all of them today, but I hope that everyone enjoyed that. And special thanks to Mike for taking his time out of his busy schedule to join us. And let's have a big round of applause for Mike Davis, former CSI president and general contractor excellence.
There you go, Mike.
I appreciate the opportunity. I hope I was just able to add something from the GC side.
Absolutely.
It was great. Thank you for your participation. And for everybody, if you'd like to mark your calendar, next month, June 4, we'll be meeting, same time, 3 o'clock Eastern. And in the meantime, between now and then, Lewis will come up with a topic for next month.
And I can hardly wait to see what David has to say about the topic. Goodbye, everyone.
So long.
Thank you.